All right, welcome back to another episode of this crap.
Over this crap? Come on, give us a title.
I did. Crap.
Okay. Aw, I like to think we're better than that.
The fuck are you on?
Yeah, I like to hope we're better than that.
Hope is wasted on the hopeless. Anyway, this week
Anyway,
we have the same shit. Oh my god, I need to fucking mute Steam. uh,
figured out.
uh, okay, let's go. There we go.
Alright.
I wish you could have just taken over there. But
Yeah,
whatever, this week it's the same shit as always. We got three questions this time. I'll start and then you can do one and then I'll finish.
okay.
So, my first question is what is a game that you have, or a JRPG, obviously,
Yeah.
that you have wanted to like and finish, but oh my god, Steam just beeped again. Okay, whatever. Anyway, that you have wanted to finish, but for one reason or another, you just weren't able to like it the way you wanted to like it.
Okay. As almost always, I kind of have two.
Go for it. I mean, I've got a couple.
Okay. The first one is Lost Odyssey,
Okay.
which I don't know why I don't or I couldn't finish it because I do like it. The first time I played it more than the second, but I do like it. I would easily recommend it to someone who can sit through that crazy story heavy, because it's story heavy even by JRPG standards.
Even compared to the Cold Steels?
Yeah, the amount of just like cutscenes and talking and super slow combats and yeah, it's story heavy.
Hmm.
Like it's up there.
Okay.
But if you're down for that, it's a good story and I like the characters and I don't really have any solid complaints. It's a game that I don't really have any complaints about, but it feels different in a way that's not enjoyable but not bad, if that makes sense. Like the combat's very defensive and very slow and very like I don't know what the right word is.
I know I
Particular.
I know I wasn't. One time I tried that game like three times, and the third time I did actually get like 20 hours into it, but
Hmm.
it was ultimately so slow that
Well, that's the thing. It
it
is
lost
slow.
me.
It is very fucking slow. But if you've got the time to just waste on it, it's worth the waste, which is weird wording, but it's worth the waste if you have time to blow on it. But that's one of them. I like that game, but I can't do it anymore.
Okay.
But I would still recommend it.
Okay.
So, what do you got?
So I have two from Final Fantasy as a series, just to
Okay.
start with.
Okay.
5 and 9.
Okay.
I've tried multiple times with both. Never
I've
been
never
able.
touched I've never touched 5, but I'll agree with 9. I've done the first hour of 9 at least 3 times.
And a lot of people like them because they're the more light-hearted games.
Okay.
And it's not even that I particularly like. I mock the way whenever Final Fantasy tries to be serious so much
Hmm.
that it shouldn't
That,
bother me that.
that you should like these lighthearted ones where they just understand that they're not serious.
But the aesthetics of 9 never
Kill
gelled
me.
for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
they never work for me. I don't
Hmm.
like them. I don't like the non-human animal characters.
Yeah.
Like Monkey Boy bothers me the fucking least compared to like Fat Man Steiner uh, every
Yeah,
single party member that's not Monkey Boy, Garnet, or
someone else.
Vivi is okay, but then all the black mages look like that, so
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay.
And Final Fantasy V just takes a
Yeah.
long time for anything interesting to happen.
Okay. That's fair.
So those are two of mine, so I'll throw it back to you.
My next one is going to be Atelier Aisha or however the fuck you say it. Which because I loved the Arland trilogy or the Rorona
Yeah,
those ones. So when Aisha come out, I was super excited for that. I pre-ordered it. I took the day off of school just so I could get it day one and play it. And by all logic, I should have loved it because the core gameplay was similar but better. They added a story of sorts, which is what the Arlen trilogy was, severely lacking. It should have been just all around better, but it wasn't. And which is weird because I know the rest of that trilogy are some of your favorites in the ateliers.
yeah, the other two.
So I mean, the Esha and Logi and whatever the other one is.
Shelly.
Yeah, because I know that you've said that you like those ones, which are part of the same trilogy as Ayesha.
Yeah,
So I don't
which
know why I can't like that one.
to be fair, I don't think I've
Played
even
Ayesha.
tried Aisha because
Hmm.
my other another one of mine would have been the Arlen trilogy,
Yeah.
and Aisha plays much more like them. But for me, it's the time limits.
See, and the
I
time limits don't bother me in the Arland trilogy. So they shouldn't bother me in Ayesha, like you're saying.
and they bother me. Eska and Logi has one, but it's so stupidly easy.
Okay.
Like it, I remember. I think I like ended up just sleeping the last 70 days because I had nothing to do.
Oh shit. All right.
Um, so, but the same thing that like drives me to optimize in something like Persona.
Mm.
Like I'm not an out and out min maxer, but I do like to optimize,
Yeah.
and that drive makes it hard with timed based games
Okay,
because
because
I
you don't really
always
have you don't have the freedom to do everything like thoughtfully because you're feeling rushed or something.
well because I feel pressured to spend my time in the most optimal way rather than the way I might want to do it.
Okay, that makes sense.
So like another example of this would be Reciteer, which isn't really an RPG, but it's a good example of where I just want to run around and fuck around in the dungeon and then sell shit.
Hmm.
But to play that game, ideally, you don't go into the dungeon at all.
Hmm. It's all store stuff.
Yeah, you have to go out to market, buy stuff, come back, open the shop. You
Yeah,
know, basically you have to play the game a certain way.
it reminds me of like a weird connection like Dead Rising, where it's fun to just run around and kill shit for 2 or 3 hours, but you can't really do that. You got to be running from objective to objective back and forth doing it that way instead of the fun of just killing shit because you're timed.
Although at least in Dead Rising, like your experience carries over. And I
Yeah,
know it does in some of these games too, but Dead Rising
it's
is just a little bit of a different beast.
it is because it's built around New Game Plus.
Yeah.
But I get your point.
So
Okay.
yeah, and that's why I've never tried Aisha. I've never wanted to try Aisha.
And I want to like it so bad. I've tried it like 2 or 3 times again and could never get more than like 5 hours into it for whatever reason. So, you have another one, or is it my turn again?
It's your turn again.
I'm gonna go Chrono Cross. I want to like Chrono Cross just because I love Chrono Trigger and it's the weird bastardized sequel, and I feel like I should like brand loyalty to it, you know? For
I
no other reason than that. I kind of like I want to like it because I loved Chrono Trigger.
I get it, but in a fitting analogy, that ship has kind of sailed for me.
Yeah,
Like it'll just it won't ever work.
no, I'm gonna give it one more try in like a year or two, and that's not gonna work, and then I'm just gonna say fuck it, I'm done for the next 10 years, and then I'll try it again later. But
I just that PS1 era Square Enix JRPG thing does
mhm,
not click with me anymore.
yeah, I
It's
see
not
that
it's not what I want from
from your RPGs.
yeah.
That's fair. So, you got any more? Or are we moving on to my I hesitate to call it a question, but topic?
I've got I know I have more, I just can't think of them off the top of my head.
All right, well,
Oh yeah, there was one other one I wanted to bring up.
what's that?
Persona 2.
You know what? I'll actually agree with Persona 2 because I've tried that one. Not a lot, but yeah.
I've tried it two or three times and I just the it makes some quality of life improvements, but the core there's like loading times before and after every battle. So while the battles themselves are quick thanks to auto battle, it's still obnoxious given the high encounter rate. You have to load after everyone. I don't like the way the cards work.
Okay.
I I don't know. It's just very tedious to play
Okay.
for me as a non fan of the older
Older style.
those like PS1 era JRPGs. It's not it doesn't work for me, which sucks because
Okay.
everybody says the story is great and I'd love to experience it, but oh well.
But not to play through it.
I can't. I've tried so many times and
That's
I
fair.
always lose interest.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I've only played it once or tried to play it once, but yeah, that happened to me too. So I get that.
So
All
yeah,
right.
those are all the major ones.
Okay. Yeah, those were my kind of major ones. I'm sure there's more in the list somewhere, but those are the ones that stand out for me. But my, like I said, I hesitate to call it a question because not really a question there. But I've noticed that in general, JRPGs kind of fit mostly three themes. You have that traditional high fantasy, magic and kings and bullshits. You've got that like magitech, almost sci-fi, almost modern, you know,
Steampunk.
almost steampunk kind of setting, and then you've got like modern Japan. So my thought, where's every other setting? Where's your like zombie survival JRPG or your modern warfare RPG or those other everything else's
Well, I don't. I
in
mean,
the
there are some games like Xenosaga which fills your sci-fi,
I mean,
your
yeah,
Xenosaga, Xenogears.
there's a little bit of sci-fi. I'll give you that one. But in general, I feel like it's limited to those kind of couple settings. It's not like action games where you've got realistic action games and then like ones in sci-fi and you've got ones in war and you've got ones in post-apocalypse and you've got ones in prehistoric times and you've got them everywhere and everything
I
and
I,
you
I think
don't as much with the JRPG. I mean, I know there are some and there's like fringe ones, but in general, it seems limited to those big three.
part of it is they're Japanese, which means
They
they're
are.
made to a Japanese aesthetic, and the Japanese aren't as taken by the modern warfare like aesthetic style.
Yeah,
When they do it, they usually go mechs and shit, and
but
you end up with
even
sci-fi.
yeah, And even the, I mean, I know there are some, but I don't feel like there are a lot of those
Well, because
enough to be noticeable.
this brings me to
Uh,
my second point that was kind
okay.
of building off of that. Uh, Can you think of a single turn-based JRPG where every character used a gun? Not as a secondary, but as their primary weapons.
I hesitate to call it a turn-based, but there was um what the fuck was it called? The one with the tower and the three people and it looks really good and I want to like it but I can't and that would have been a great one for that last answer.
Oh, Resonance of Fate.
That one. Yes, that one.
Okay, so that's one.
That's one. Um
And
yeah,
even then, it's a radically different style.
and like I said, I hesitate to count it as turn-based, but there's that one. For s- for some weird reason I feel like there's a Serious Sam turn-based RPG.
I don't.
I feel like there is, but I might just be
Let's keep
pulling
it
out of
to
my ass.
Japan because otherwise you get into
Yeah,
Wasteland and Fallout and stuff like that, and I don't want to.
but those, I mean, aren't even turn-based JRPGs anyways, but I get your point.
The
But
old ones
still,
were turn based.
I thought they were, we're getting off topic, but I was gonna say I thought those were like CRPG styles.
Yeah, turn based though. They weren't real
Are
time
they?
unpause. They were turn based.
Oh, okay. I haven't played them enough to, but okay, that's fair. But you're right, sticking to
Japan.
JRPG styles, Resonance of Fate, and that's kind of feels like it.
And I mean, I can tell you, I wouldn't play one with all guns
Why not?
because I don't. When I play something with a gun, I want more control over it. I mean,
Okay.
the thing with the sword is it can be swung numerous different ways,
Yeah.
which is why it's more fun for like a third person action RPG or whatever.
Okay.
But a gun just shoots. That's what it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
And that's all it can do.
Yeah.
And that they're
I
they're
mean,
they're actually fuck. Parasite Eve
okay.
is a combination of survival horror and JRPG.
With is it JRPG style?
It's
'Cause
kind of a modified one. It's kind of like in the Vagrant story where it's it's all takes place on the map, but with
okay.
Parasite Eve, I think it's turn based on the map. Like you have a
So I always
radius that you can move in, and
okay. I've never played those, but I've heard the name enough times. I always thought those were more like action oriented.
I don't think so. I can't swear to it, but
Okay.
and you see how well that sold,
Yeah, it sold
and
like
how
shit.
well
Yeah.
Resonance of Fate sold.
Yeah, not well enough.
That's just
But
one of
I
those like differences in aesthetic preferences.
but I wish it worked or it was done right or
I mean,
whatever it needs to do
Wild
to
Arms
get
was Wild West JRPGs.
yeah. Let's see, we've got three, and in Final Fantasy alone, we've got like seven of the high fantasies and another seven of the textiles.
There's only like five high fantasy ones.
All right, well, still my point.
Ever since
I would
six, they've been going for a merge.
they've been going more for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, 10 was no, I guess 10 was
I was gonna say, do you remember Xanarkand?
I do remember Xanarkand, but I also remember everything else of that game that felt more fantasy style. But that was still more of a mix. But it definitely wasn't not one of those big three pillars.
So yeah, I mean,
I mean, like logistically and geographically, but I understand why, kinda.
And you had Shin
I would
Megami
just,
Tensei Strange Journey, which took place in the North Pole.
yeah,
Yeah,
huh. I actually have not heard of that. But I would just like to see more. I would like to see that widen, you know?
they just have to sell well, and I think that's
They don't.
the challenge.
Mm,
And it's one of the difficulties of having a niche genre
yeah.
is that you don't have the advertising to really go out and say, look at our thing that's different
Mm.
and try to get in a new crew. Generally, when something is niche, it's appealing to the same audience over and over and over.
And I feel like that's a lot of what JRPGs do is it's the same group who buys most of them.
Yeah,
And that particular group likes what they like and doesn't really want to branch out as much, so the developers aren't going to branch out as much.
because it's too much of a risk.
It is, but I would just I would like that risk to pay off and to see more diversity in the JRPG setting.
I mean, that's why, as much as I like Octopath Traveler, I can't say I love it, and that's just because so much of
Mm,
it is that fantasy,
yeah,
been there, done it setting.
been there, done it a million times because it's one of the big three that works. Okay, but that's what I was just thinking about earlier today. Is how cool it would be to have like a zombie survival JRPG where all your characters are survivors and you're trying to get through the map and all the enemies are different zombie types and something like that where you could still have that same over the top JRPG storytelling and combat style just with a drastically different setting. That'd be cool, I
I
think.
think it'd be hard to keep a zombie story up for 20 hours, but
It would, but I mean they kept it going for fucking like 80 hours in The Walking Dead, and that's just one big continuous zombie story that admittedly gets kind of shitty at points,
I
but
was gonna say, yeah, but didn't that show die like after a few seasons?
still, my point. They kept a zombie story going for like 80 hours. So if we can, get the good 30 of that and just put that into a game, then I'm sold. But I thought it was interesting, and I'm hopeful. But
I don't know what
maybe
you've
that's
seen
me.
that makes you hopeful, but hasn't been anything that I've been seeing.
No, I haven't seen anything either. I dream,
You just forget all your dreams.
metaphorically, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
Anyways, what's your next question?
So the last question we have for today is: Do class systems? Do you like it when a JRPG lets you choose your class or your party members' classes?
Do you like it when they let you choose as opposed to not being there or having like set classes?
Either or, like as opposed to something like Persona where everybody has rules, or something uh, like Final Fantasy X where again everybody has rules. I can't think of a game where the classes are fixed off the top of my head. Most of them that bother having classes have roles rather than classes.
Hmm. I I like the idea of characters fitting their role. So if I could have two or three classes that all fit the same role for that character and pick which class of that role I want to be, I think that would be interesting. Like, say, for example, you had this character, and this character was a healer. No matter what this character, their role is healer. But there are three different types of healers, three different classes, and you could pick which healer class you wanted to be and which healer subclass you wanted to be while still keeping that character primarily as a healer. I think that would be interesting because you still get the narrative focus of that character is a healer, that's what they do, but you get the personal freedom of choosing what class, what subclass, how you want to play them as that healer.
Well,
And I think that would be like my personal ideal.
that hits on why I don't typically like this because I know a lot of people do. I think
Hmm.
if you asked most people in the community who aren't us, the answer
Yeah.
would be yes. But I don't for
Yeah.
two reasons, and one of them is part of it's a phrase called Ludo narrative dissonance,
Okay.
which is when the gameplay doesn't match the story.
Yeah.
It's why can you use Phoenix Downs in battle but Eris is dead forever?
Yeah.
That's Ludo narrative dissonance.
Okay.
And I think that part of bridging the gap between gameplay and story is having a character act in combat reflective of how they act out of combat.
Na- Narratively, yeah.
Yeah, your thief should be sneaky and snarky. Your healer should be a pussy faggot, and
Hmm.
your tank should be a beefy dumbass. I'm not saying they have to be. These are
Have
just
to be
simple
that. Yeah.
archetypes that illustrate like the point.
Yeah.
They should have more depth to them than just these one-off caricatures.
No.
But compared to something like Final Fantasy V, where every character can be everything, they don't feel as well defined as if they had roles within the story.
See, that's what I was just thinking when you mentioned that of Final Fantasy VII, where everyone can more or less equally be everything. So these characters didn't really have a combat personality anymore.
Yep.
They were just they had their story person and then they had their combat person, and half the time those were two different people. You could have Barrett in the story being this big, loud, brash dude, and then in combat he's a healer because you built him that way, and that feels weird. Like you were saying, that doesn't match, and that causes problems. But I don't like it so far when they take away any kind of character freedom. I feel like there needs to be a balance.
Well, usually that comes in party composition.
Hmm.
Usually.
Usually, and that's why I was saying I like, my idea from the beginning is your healer is still always your healer,
Well,
but there's a slight variance on how they how they healer,
and
so that you still get to have them be your healer as a player and have them be the narrative healer as well.
and my second big problem with it
Hmm.
is that it's very difficult. The appeal should be the more obtuse classes,
Yeah,
and yet if I'm playing a game, right, and it's my first time playing it,
yeah.
generally I'm not gonna go for the crazy shit.
No, you're gonna go for the ones that you know that are
Yeah,
understandable.
it's like again, I just use Final Fantasy because it's like the archetypical
Yeah,
thing, but it's like just stick a warrior, a black mage, a white mage, and then whatever the fuck you want for your second melee,
yeah, and then a
and you're good to
fighter.
go. And it's like
Yeah,
you have a ton of class options,
you got
but
tons of unique, cool stuff, but those are weird and hard to mix in when you're new to it.
yeah, you have to find a way to introduce people to these different classes, but that also doesn't feel restrictive.
Hmm.
Because like part of Final Fantasy 13's frustrations was that it took so long for you to just be able to make what you wanted.
Yeah,
It
I
was
get that.
good. It was good for a bit because it really forced you to understand all the different roles.
Yeah,
It just
that
went
makes
on too
sense. I mean, that came out a 30-hour tutorial. That's really all it was.
yeah, and
Which, Yeah, problems.
The
Obvious
reason
problems.
the reason I bring this up is I would have said just no, blanket no.
Blanket no to classes?
Yeah,
Okay.
but but Octopath did it in a way that I have never seen done before,
Okay.
where it worked for me in every level
Okay.
because everybody has a fixed class.
Okay.
So you get that narrative consistency.
All right.
But then everybody can have a secondary class, and that secondary class is one of the 8 classes that your other characters are.
Okay.
And then there's 4 that you can unlock in the world.
Okay.
So what's nice about this is, like I said, it addresses both problems. First of all, it addresses the story problem because everybody has their role.
Their first fixed role. Okay.
But secondly, because you have to play all these characters for all of their chapters,
Hmm.
you have an idea of how they all work and what each one of them do.
Okay.
So you're not blindly picking something and then having to grind up a bunch of job points or whatever
To
just
figure it
to
out.
just to figure out that, wait a minute, this class sucks, or I don't
All
like
right.
this class,
Yeah.
because you've already had that class. You already know
With
what it
someone
does.
else.
Yeah, you already have an idea of what it was. So instead, the thinking becomes, how do I synergize the main class and the secondary class?
Between all of my various party characters.
Yeah, and then how can I synergize this with the other characters in my party?
Okay.
So for
Hmm.
once, it's actually a game that gives me that feeling of, like I said, I really want to replay that game because I have an idea for a party that I want to run,
Okay.
but doesn't have that drawback of sacrificing character,
Yeah.
that element of character, or
Ma-
feeling like I'm just going to stick to the traditional rules because I don't really care enough about. It also helps that the combat is good. This is kind of
Yeah.
like the half-ish point that I feel just kind of goes without saying.
It has to be good combat either way.
Because if you can just hit the attack button or just cast Firaga or something like
Yeah.
that,
Then it doesn't matter.
yeah, then who cares? It's hard to
Hmm.
make interesting classes like that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
Um, like Blue Dragon is another one that I think of, even though I've never played it,
I have a little bit actually.
where it just seems like the class system doesn't do anything for the
It
game.
doesn't do anything. It doesn't at all. They could have. I mean, the class system is fine, but the fact that you can make anyone anything, it feels that didn't need to be there. It's like they could have picked a class for a person, just said this person is this class and been done with it. And personally, I think that might have been better.
Yeah, so it's not all hating, but it's why games like Bravely Default and Final Fantasy V, and there are tons of them with jobs out there, just don't click for me.
They need to match.
But
They,
Octopath
they
to me just nailed it.
did. There's a right way to do it. I think the freedom that classes gives you is good, as long as there's a way to ensure that it still contains that freedom in a way that matches the narrative, which is hard to do without taking away that freedom in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and
Or am I just being crazy?
it's a fine balance to walk because even something like Trails games,
Hmm.
and I'm not just going to say Cold Steel because the ordnance system existed since Sky,
Yeah,
where characters clearly have roles, but it's
but
up to you whether you play to those roles or make them do something else.
that's actually a good way of thinking about it because you're right. They do have that what they're built for, but you don't have to play them the way they're built, which I think Final Fantasy VII tried to do that too, but it just wasn't as clear about it or
Well, it's hard for me to
forced about it.
look at the Final Fantasy VII and be like, okay, find the mage.
But I guess if it's like
Uh,
narratively, I have no fucking clue. But I guess if you look at the stats, like individually, one of them does have like a notably higher base magic stat.
but that's what
I
I'm
think
saying is like pick out the
you
mage from Final Fantasy VII
you can't
based just
tell.
on their design and personality.
Yeah, you can't tell without looking at their stats, and that's
Yeah,
rough.
yeah, that violates the first rule.
Hmm.
I mean, like it should be obvious that Cloud is a soldier. He should be more of a fighter than a mage.
Yeah, and
And
yet for some reason he has really high magic.
Barrett seems like he should be more of a fighter than a mage. And
Hmm.
Tifa likes to punch things.
So she's a fighter,
And Sid
and
likes to stab things with his spear and looks like a washed up drunk.
so he's a fighter.
And Red 13 is a dog.
He's a fucking wolf. He's a hunter. He's a fighter.
So,
So then you're left with the one with a staff, who is clearly a mage and dies,
yeah, I was going to say,
and
and dies.
and dies, and then you got the weird cat thingy,
Which,
and you
what, what,
and you
what?
yeah. Then you've got the ninja, which is a fighter, and
Yeah.
you've got the weird vampire dude, which he has guns. He's like a fighter.
Which nothing about him screams mage. Everything about him screams emo douchebag.
Yeah. So I mean, none of them scream "I'm a mage" except for the one who dies.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's a bit of a
Yeah.
problem.
Oh yeah, spoilers, I guess.
That
But
Snape also kills Dumbledore.
oh yeah, I suppose that's true. I haven't seen that. That might be a lie. I don't know. Anyways, that was a good
Anyway,
week.
what?
So, what's going on new in the world of JRPGs with you?
Finally 100% into Compendium and Persona. Now I can stop that New Game Plus run that sucks so hard. Because it's so
Congratulations.
boring. I love killing bosses in one hit. It's so much fun. It's like cheating in Grand Theft Auto. It's fun for 10 minutes and then the novelty wears off and then you're bored.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Cool.
just Cold Steel, man. Cold Steel and a
Yep.
shitload of Phantasy Star Online too.
Don't sound too bad.
I've got Xenoblade Chronicles on the back
Sit-
burner. Like that's gonna come
oh,
up at some point. Caligula Effect is gonna come up at some point. I, Something else is gonna come up at some point, but none of it fucking matters because I've got 3 fucking Cold Steel games, maybe
Yeah.
4.
I just got my 4 pre-order today, so I got all 4 now.
So, yay!
Cool.
I don't really have anything to say about Cold Steel like that. I feel needs to be on the show because my thoughts are still very much forming
All right.
because it gets better as it goes.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, the early game is not.
It's not where that game shines.
Yeah. So I think that's this week's episode. Yay! Whatever, we did it. Fuck it. I don't know.
That fizzled.
Bye.